All right, we are back with a new video, and today we'll be updating the Amazing Race 33 Power Rankings following episode 7. And this episode was just kind of fine. I mean, I had a strong feeling it was going to be a non elimination episode anyway, given the format of the season and the fact that there are fewer teams around. And considering the lack of movement and placements compared to last week, I felt like this leg was kind of stagnant for the most part. But with that, it is now time to update the power rankings, which, despite the placements not being too exciting for this leg, I actually did change the rankings quite a bit compared to last week. So let's dive right in. So, starting out the list at number 5, the team I think is the least likely to win Amazing Race 33 at this point is Arun and Natalia. Yeah, I have them at the bottom again this week, and it's sort of crazy how this is technically the second time they've been saved by a non elimination leg. And even more so, you consider the fact that they were actually eliminated from the race early on, only to come back because fewer teams returned. So it's sort of crazy how, and when you really think about it, this is the third non-elimination leg that they survived up to this point. So it's sort of crazy how they managed to stay in the race due to that. But obviously, this wasn't that great of a leg for them. I mean, they were the fourth lead, the pit stop. They talk about having momentum at the last leg, but they need to be better in navigation. And while we don't see them get lost at any point, they just kind of fall behind where they're the last to arrive at the cheese task. They're the last to lead the cheese task, last to arrive at the detour. Obviously, they choose the memorization one and they do that one with Lulu and Lala. They both screw up the first attempt and have to do it again, which causes Ryan and Dusty to get further ahead of them. Last to lead the detour, fourth to reach the robot, actually, but Lulu and Lala are able to pull ahead towards the end of that, allowing them to fall into last place. And it seemed like it was going to be a bit of a foot race for them, although obviously Lulu and Lala beat them out, causing them to be in last place for the third time this season. However, it was a non elimination leg, so it was interesting to see that play out. And again, I don't really have much faith in them moving forward. I feel like the other teams have been more consistent to this point. While they did have that third place finish early on the race, I feel like the rest of the time they've always been in the back of the pack. And when you add in the fact that they don't really have much storylines compared to the other teams, and obviously them surviving an elimination and then surviving two non-elimination legs after that point, I feel like number 5 is where I had to put them. Now we're moving on to number 4, and again, this is also kind of boring because it's the same placement as last week. It is Raquel and Cayla. Now this was actually a pretty good leg for them. I mean, they were the second to lead the pit stop. They talk about how they need to win one leg to win the race. They talk about how the pandemic has been tough for them and how they need to had to move in with their moms due to losing their jobs. But obviously we see them, stick with Kim and Penn for a lot of the leg. They get help on directions from them, but says they will pass them. Obviously, they're the first to arrive at the cheese task, calls Kim and Penn a very strong team, and it seems like they were about to go on without them to the detour. However, obviously we see them ultimately wait for Kim and Penn so that they can finish the cheese task, and obviously they go to the detour with them. First to arrive at the detour, and they choose the memorization one. They obviously work alongside Kim and Penn for that one. They talk about how having four people watching the fish is helpful, which is, a bit insane, but whatever. Second to finish the detour, obviously. First to reach the roadblock. However, Penn is able to beat them on that. Obviously, through that, they are the second to finish, and ultimately they get a second place finish. So, again, this is a solid leg for them. However, I feel like them, along with Lulu and Lala, they're kind of up in the air right now in terms of their edit, where technically Raquel and Kayla have been getting more solid content lately. However, I'm not sure if it's really enough to propel them compared to the others. Like, I still feel like Lulu and Lala are more compelling underdogs compared to them. And I found it interesting how they were shown, like contemplating backstabbing Kim and Penn quite a bit, but obviously not following through on it. So there's that to consider as well. And also the fact that like Brian and Dusty, Kim and Penn are more solid teams on them within the race. So because of that, I have them here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and this is literally a team I just mentioned. It is Lulu and Lala. Now, obviously, they technically had a worse leg than Raquel and Kayla. Obviously, they were the last to leave the pit stop, fourth to arrive at the cheese task, fourth to leave the cheese task, fourth to arrive at the detour. Obviously, they choose the memorization one with Arun and Natalia. Obviously, they screwed up the first attempt and had to do it again, but they are technically able to finish it before them. They're the last to reach the roadblock as Arun and Natalia technically beat them out navigation wise. However, Lulu and Lala are able to beat them on the task during the roadblock, fourth to finish. And then obviously they beat Arun and Natalia out on the foot race to the pit stop. So they get a fourth place finish there. So not the greatest leg in the world, although I feel like part of the reason for that is because I don't know. I just feel like this leg was kind of stagnant at the end of the day, and I feel like it was very hard for the team, like the three teams in the back of the pack, to really come close to the top two teams. However, obviously, you give them credit for staying ahead, but obviously, it didn't make for the most entertaining leg in the world. And I don't know. For me, it's still a toss up between Lulu and Lala and Raquel and Kayla, where I feel like both of them have gotten some positive content here or there, and I feel like they're both trying to fill a somewhat similar spot of representing this ideal of an all woman team winning the race. And I decided to give Lulu and Lala the edge here. I feel like they're a bit more likely to be presented as underdogs moving forward. And it wouldn't surprise me where Helen Kayla moved up, especially if Lulu and Lala end up having a bad leg coming up. But for now, I decided number three was a good place to put them. Now we're moving on to number two, and I really thought about this because obviously this is a team I've had relatively high for a lot of the race, and I still feel somewhat confident about them. However, I feel like as time has gone on, I feel like the edit hasn't really been there for them, and because of that, I had to put Ryan and Dusty here at number two. Now, obviously, this was a decent leg for them. I mean, they're the third to lead the pit stop. They talk about how they were distracted on the last leg, but they had to refocus on what they'd done before. Third to arrive at the cheese test, third to finish, of course. Third to finish, arrive at the detour, and they're the only team to choose the rowing one. Obviously, they talked about how they're physical enough to do it, plus they're confident they can catch up quickly. And while we see them struggle quite a bit, where obviously water gets into their boat, they are ultimately the catch up. Third to finish the detour, and that coupled with Aruna and Natalia screwing up the memorization detour, that really allows them to build a bit of a cushion for them in third place. Obviously, they're the third to reach the roadblock. They talk about being patient from his time in prison. And then while Kim and Penn and Raquel and Kayla are ultimately able to finish the roadblock before them, they are able to secure their third place finish. And obviously, they're third on the leg. So not bad, not a bad leg for them. However, the main reason I decided to drop them is because I feel like one, other teams have been getting more stronger content than them recently. But even beyond that, I feel like Kim and Penn have really solidified themselves as a stronger team. I mean, I already thought that, but I feel like again their dominance on the race isn't as uh singular anymore. I feel like there are other teams that can legitimately challenge them at this point. And we've been getting more storylines about how they're the team to beat, which obviously isn't that great of a look for them, as I feel like that could be setting up for them losing at the end for one of these underdogs to win. So because of that, I had them here at number two. And now at number one, the team I think is the most likely to win the Amazing Race 33 is Kim and Penn. And it's sort of crazy how they've definitely gotten an uptick in personal content lately. I feel like they are starting to become more of characters. And obviously, when you combine that with their performance on the race, it does make me feel a bit more confident about them. I mean, they are obviously the first to leave the pit stop. They talk about winning the last leg was good, as Ryan and Dusty were so dominant before. They're able to ask for directions in French and help Raquel and Kayla. They're second to arrive at the cheese task, and they didn't like how Raquel and Kayla followed them there, only to pass them. But obviously, we see Raquel and Kayla, agree to wait for them after the cheese task so that they can go to the detour together. They're the second to arrive at the detour, and they choose the memorization one. First to finish the detour, second to reach the roadblock. However, Penn is able to figure it out, and are obviously the first to finish. And then ultimately they win the leg. They're third of the season. They're tied for Ryan and Dusty at this point. Obviously, this is now their second win in a row as well. And again, I feel like they have been getting more momentum lately. Later on, obviously, I already felt like they were one of the better teams on the race from a pure race perspective. And I feel like we're really starting to see that now. And when you combine that with their personal content, I feel like they've been getting a bit more content than talking about them having fun on the race. And obviously, they're working with Raquel and Kayla and how they see Ryan and Dusty as their toughest competition. I feel like those are all things going in Kim and Penn's favor. And I feel like there's now a legitimate chance they could win the race. I mean, before I kind of saw them as this team that would get to the end and then probably lose at the final leg. And while that's still possible, I mean, I don't really see them getting eliminated before that point. And I feel like again, they could be winners at this point. So I feel like because of that, I have them here at number 1, the most likely team to win Amazing Race 33 for the time being. And there we go. That will do it for this week's power rankings for Amazing Race 33. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. I'm going to be continuing this power rankings for the rest of the season. Like especially as it's getting down to the wire, should be fun to cover. I'm currently covering Australian Survivor, Blood versus Water. That's a very fun season playing out. We recently got the cast for Survivor 42, which I'm very excited about. Like obviously I'll be covering them soon, uh, like although it'll probably be a couple weeks. And then obviously Celebrity Big Brother is playing out right now. Like that's been a bit interesting to talk about, but I'm covering that as well. A lot of stuff coming up for this channel. But for now, that is the video. See ya.